to the studio. I've decided to show you the top 12 pics of the 70s, starting with seeing all these things. She stored them in her medicine cabinet. It's a mixed media drawing that I did in February 1970, followed not too long after by one of the first three-dimensional stitched photos that I ever did, called Lake Bottom Seeds. This was done in March of 1970. It's a black and white photo that's been toned, and they're radish seeds that have been stitched in a mylar packet over the photograph. So it's interactive. Fall of 1970, I was living in Rochester, New York, teaching, and I did this book called Neptune and Lake Lady. It contains 9 prints. They're mixed media collages using orthofilm, toned photographs, stitching, and mylar, and it describes a relationship that I was in at the moment. There are, as I say, 9 images, and it was meant to be bound in a book, but it can be taken out and shown on the wall. Eventually I learned to do gum bichromate, and this particular piece was done in February 1972. It's called Beach and Constellations. It's pretty much the only gum print on fabric that is still in my hands, literally. I also did another cloth piece, and this is the last of 5 pieces, called Sister in the Garden. This was done in January 1972. It's liquid light on cloth with a silver print that's been encased in mylar. It's a portrait of my sister Connie. Unicorn tapestry is a combination of several of my interests. There's a cyanotype on fabric, a gum print on paper, and a toned silver print, and the whole thing is stitched together as a collage. Unicorn tapestry was also done in 1972. I shifted gears in summer of 72 and began to use an Instamatic camera. And this is a complete set, the last complete set of events in the water. Actually, I only made one set. The others were used in a book. So these are silver gelatin prints. They're small, printed from Instamatic negatives, and there's a sequence of, I believe it's 13 prints. This is the exception. This was a photograph that I actually took when I was about 10 years old with another plastic camera. But the rest of the sequence was done with Instamatic negatives. And that is events in the water. Next, I've got one of the very few large cyanotypes of mine. It's called Fish Fantasy. This one's been reproduced in the textbook Breaking the Rules, and I think another book as well. So it's quite well known. It's cyanotype with a little bit of Van Dyke Brown and oil paint additions. This is a unique piece. I really didn't do very many like this at all. This one is called St. Croix, and it is a sequence of images that create a panorama of the skyline of the rainforest in St. Croix. It's printed on photo linen, stitched together and hand-colored and stretched sort of like a canvas. Next is a portfolio called Warm Weather Wishes, and there are about 9 of these left. They're larger scale, stitched photographs that have been hand colored. They're stitched directly onto the board, and they are essentially my wishes for warmer weather when I was living in Rochester, New York. And I will send you images of the entire set. They're a little difficult to photograph because they warp, being stitched down, not dry mounted. But they're all hand colored. There are places that I would have rather been than Rochester in the winter, including Paris, Florida, Barcelona, and so forth. That's Warm Weather Wishes, and in the late 70s, I discovered quick print, and I worked in two different scales. This is the smaller of the two. This particular image is also fairly iconic. It's called Island Sunset, and it's been reproduced pretty widely. So this one is about 15 by 18 inches, quick print. And finally, I have a triptych that I did. It was shown not too long ago in the Howard Greenberg Gallery show called Six from the 70s. It's called the Moon and Dish Triptych. So this is one. This is two. This is the center image. You can see these are really large. When you hang them on the wall, it's probably the largest work I ever did in quick print. And this is number 3. So that's a dozen images from the 70s. I pretty much finished the 70s doing quick print entirely and moved on into the 80s with that medium. Hope you like them.